do very well with these videos, which I write down the idea for. Better when they're spontaneous, but I did a Bonnie Bainbridge coin class today. I've been doing those for the past 3 or 4 years, and during the class, this is so not relevant, I had the idea about connection and how it relates to PTSD going on from my previous, but in a more light mood. So I don't know what she said that triggered that thought in me, but basically we're studying neurotransmitters and glial cells and perception and motoring. And basically she was explaining that perception, the dendrites, which is the neurons, are the part of the neuron that is receiving the information. The dendrites receive multiple channeled information, and then that is submitted up as a unified information, and it gets processed through the posterior, what is it called? I don't know, posterior something, but through the back. It enters into the central nervous system through the back. And then it is processed through the synapse into a motored response, which is unified too. And I realized that, and she speaks a lot about staying in the synapse, so really indulging a kind of wetting yourself in the feeling and the perception before you motor out. And she says that, you know, most of physiotherapy or most of movement practice, so this video is about movement. What is movement about? Most of movement practice is about the motoring response and like doing more reps and more movement and learning through movement. And she kind of she works on stimulating embodiment and sensation and feeling as a way to enhance our capacity to motor. And basically she had a really clear thought today about how sensing really stimulates the sensing, the multidimensional sensing. If it's really clarified, it goes in as a unified experience, and then it can come out as a unified motored experience with more clarity, with more strength. It's like neurostrengthening. So Sue Hitzman talks about neurostrengthening, and then Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, she's all about embodiment as a way of neurostrengthening, enhancing the motoring response through the perception that goes in. So what goes in, so focusing on the going in and really indulging, wetting, swimming in that perception before you motor out, like giving the body a chance to sit in that synapse and really decide which way it's going to go. And then for me, what came up is because I've worked with a child who had sensory integration issues. And my understanding was that sensory integration happens in the central nervous system, not at the sensory level of the nervous system, not at the periphery, not in the neurons. But once it goes to the central nervous system, anyway, that's a thought about what movement is about. And I don't know why it made me think about PTSD and connection. I guess maybe because to sense, you really have to connect with an experience, with your experience. I don't know. I listened to a podcast today with Gwyneth Paltrow, and she was basically speaking about the dignity, giving yourself the chance, the dignity of connecting deeply. For she was talking about women. For some reason, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen also mentioned. It was very random. I didn't follow through where that came from. But she said, I don't believe that a woman was made from a man's rib. I don't know what her train of thought was, but it just really connected with the sentence that Gwyneth Paltrow mentioned about giving yourself the dignity of befriending yourself or being close to yourself, to your experience, to indulging in your experience, so that you connect with what is right and what is wrong, and have a response, put yourself out there in a way that's coherent and stronger. So you're stronger in your response out, in your presentation, not just in feeling, but also in the doing part. And so it kind of made me aware that PTSD people, so we were talking about like perception, and sensory integration is a perceptual problem that, for example, people with ADHD or whatever that thing is called, attention deficit disorders, have a problem with sensory integration, and so they have dysregulated attention. Their cognition gets affected. But I guess it made me think about PTSD and how people have a hard time connecting. And that in a way inhibits their output, motoring output. So they get stuck either in fight or flight, or they get stuck in freeze response, which a freeze response is still a motoring response. It's an over activation of the muscles to the point where they're gripping, and the antagonist and the protagonist are actually fighting each other, as opposed to supporting the movement, which is functional movement. So this video was supposed to be the one video where I'm showing something, but conceptual thoughts are motoring responses. So some people think that intelligence is cerebral and disconnected from the body. You have no original thinking without first having sensed something. Thoughts are a motoring response to a sensation. Neurologically, children develop cognitive capacities through feeling, through sensation, through eating, seeing, through stimulating their neuroreceptors. Basically, they start to generate cognition through the gradual integration of sensory perception. So anyway, connection. PTSD people have a hard time motoring. They have motor system dysregulation because they have a hard time connecting. So in somatic practice, connecting to the ground is a very important aspect, a very important skill we practice. Why is that? So when I'm on the ground, on my belly, I have a lot of support. Basically, I have the whole support of my whole body. So all of this is receiving support. So I can move here with the support of my whole body. I'm not really challenged in terms of support here. I have all the support. I'm over supported to the way where I could be very stable. Once we start raising up, and here I'm on 4 base of support, and then I can come all the way up to standing, which I don't know if yeah, you can see me. So when I come up to standing, Now I'm a lot more mobile because my base of support is so much smaller. It's more dynamic. And then I could be on one leg, and then my connection is so small that I really am volatile and mobile. So, wait, I really have to tighten this because it's gonna fall. um, so basically, connection is not so connection to self. Oh yeah, this is where my whole idea came. Like when Potra was speaking how important it is to remain close to yourself in order to know how to, she was talking about her career, but what is the, or her relationships or something, but making decisions about her life. So why is it important to connect to self or to be close to yourself? It's the same reason why it's important to connect to the ground. Is when you receive support, that connection is valuable not for the sake, we seek connection not for the sake of something intrinsically valuable in connecting. Ultimately, it gives us the capacity to move. So it gives us the capacity to separate in a way. So in somatic practice, our ultimate goal is to become fluid and mobile. Everybody's talking about flexibility in yoga. Not everybody, actually. A lot of people were talking about stability. A lot of people around me practice stability as a pathway to mobility. But connection gives you the capacity to feel support, and that support gives you stability from which you can explore and open up into mobility. If you don't have stability, it's very easy to go into a freeze response or a fight and flight response where you become tense because you're overstimulating or overreacting to a perception, whatever perception it is, whether it's like I don't know, like wind, or whether it's a perception like that's a natural one, or it's like responding to a thought or desire to move in space. But if you don't have connection, and that's where connection to self is very important, because we have no control over other people or even life events, like things happen and things change, so we might lose connections with people, things, jobs, etc., material possessions. So those connections do not the strongest source of connection is the self. This is like spiritual practices or even somatic practices, but that is really to the spine. In yoga we connect to the spine as a way of giving ourselves the sensation of connection, which is ultimately a sensation of closeness and support, from which we have the strength and the synaptical space and time where we can make a decision that's clear to make a move forward or backward or whatever. But yeah, connection as a source of support, not connection for the sake of connection. So Gwyneth Paltrow was speaking about her software being rebooted when she was 40 and losing that fear or that constant preoccupation for whether you will be rejected or whether you will be approved or whatever, which a younger, less mature person is very much stimulated through that awareness of the need to be accepted or integrated or whatever, and how she became less of a people pleaser. And it just got me thinking about, it's the same with movement, with our mobility and flexibility in the body, with the health of our body. So she was speaking about mental health and, personal maturity, etc., in terms of capacity to make movements in your career choices or in expressing your ambitions or in making, work. But it's the same in movement, in our physical well-being, in our body. for us to make a move, we need to have the sensation of support. I cannot move without gravity giving me this relationship to the ground. When we're floatless and we don't experience gravity, it's much more difficult to move, because what are you pushing against? Where are you receiving the support, the connection, and the connection for the purpose of support from where you can stand up in gravity and resist? So yeah, connection. And there's a lot of talk about connection, opening your heart space. A lot of people in yoga go up to, and those are very deeply empathetic people. It's very easy for the energy to go up because we could feel elevated. There's a lot of things that can elevate us. Unless you sense the ground, you can become very dysregulated from feeling too much. So being in your heart space and feeling too much without having the support of the ground. You need to be weighted down to be safe enough to feel. And that's very much the basis of the type of yoga I teach, which is very much the type of technique that we use in neurofascial hydration. Is we work with the stability system of the body, because pain is often a signal that you're feeling unsupported and undernourished. You need stability to receive nourishment. You need stability to be mobile, to be active, and not restricted. Because restriction, too much tightness, lack of mobility, this is an overreaction of the motoring part in the nervous system perception. Motoring, the sensory motor control. Sensory motor control becomes inhibited or overstimulated when we don't have a clear signal, we don't receive the sensation of the ground, or we are receiving a singular sensation and it doesn't integrate. So it's like we don't integrate the multiplicity of our perception and then manage to have one coherent response. That's not an over response and it's not an under response. We're adequately stimulated and we motor out clearly. I hope this was educational for someone. I hope that it was inspiring. It was fun for me. Sensory motor control. That is what we try to improve by hydrating the collagen in your body, and we do it with compression techniques, by using a ball and roller. If you want to learn about that, send me a message and sign up for a consultation with me. And yoga is more clarifying your perception. We still work with the ground, but more for clarifying the perception part. Whereas the neurofascial technique is improving the texture of your connective tissue, the environment within which the neurons live. And so I feel yoga and neurofascial technique really enhance each other, because once I started hydrating my body, I could feel all of the connections that could give me a sense of mobility increase much quicker. My connectivity was much stronger in my body, with the ground, with my breath. I don't know who understood this, but have a great day, evening, night.